everyone. Welcome to Journey of Life with GRI Disorders. I'm Heather. I'm delighted to be the moderator for this session. And I'm also Maximilian's mom. My son Max is 10 years old and he has a GRI-4 variant. With us today, we have Beth, Laura, and Sheila, three amazing moms of adult children with GRI disorder who will share their stories and experiences and answer our questions, which is wonderful. So thank you all so much for being on this panel. This session is going to follow a Q&A format, so please ask questions. On the far right-hand side, you can see the Q&A tab. So just click on there, type in your question and hit submit, and we'll try and get to as many of the questions as we can. So with that, let's get started. I'd like to ask each of our panelists to tell us about your GRI child and family. Beth, would you like to start?
Oh, sure, I guess so. My name is Beth Klein. This is my daughter, Devin. If anybody can see it, enjoying a beach day there. We live in St. John's, Michigan. She is 31 years old. She has an older brother that lives in Denver with his wife, older sister that lives about 20 minutes away, and two nephews. She stands a formidable 4'11" and weighs in at about 100 pounds. And it's really hard to condense 31 years. And I wasn't sure what to address, so I decided I'll start by listing all the diagnoses that Devin has had. Her initial diagnosis around 3 months was failure to thrive, atrial septal defect, hypotonia, nystagmus, and strabismus. Early interventions included physical therapy, occupational therapy, vision therapy, and speech therapy. She was then diagnosed with sensory integration disorder. Our first trip to MSU Genetics proved we came away empty-handed with no answers. Around 2.5 or 3.5, she developed focal seizures, which required an MRI. And at that time, she was diagnosed with an arachnoid cyst, increased lateral ventricles, and microencephaly. And so at this time, about 6 months later, she was diagnosed with autism and cognitive impairment. And throughout her life, she's also struggled with many digestive issues. Her behavioral issues when she was young included them all: hitting, pinching, biting, pulling hair, scratching, sitting down and becoming a statue and refusing to move or do things. I don't know if anybody's dealt with that. Her therapies that we've tried include vision, speech, occupational, physical, BCBA, vitamin B12 shots, supplements, digestive enzymes, chelation, horseback riding, peer-to-peer, anxiety medicines, and a gluten-free and dairy-free diet, and probiotics. Fast forward to around age 25, she was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and it was at this time that I begged to get her back into genetics, and that's when we were diagnosed with our GRIN 2B. Her current diagnosis is profound to severe autism and profound to severe intellectual impairment, and she is nonverbal. And this is what we heard early on. There's no place for your daughter in our school system. She needs to be in an institution. She will never dress herself, toilet train, bathe herself, have a job, or have meaningful relationships. But I'm here to tell you, parents, that those are her diagnosis and not her story, because Devin's story is full of resilience, bravery, laughter, perseverance, joy, and hope. Because the labels that they give your child are just that. They're labels. They are not her limits. They are guidelines that we need to respect when teaching our kids. What Devin can do now at age 31, she can dress herself with supervision. She can indeed use the restroom. She's pretty close to being able to bathe herself independently. She puts away all of our household laundry. She can unload the dishwasher. She chooses her own food, her own TV shows, her own music videos, her own places to go, her own people to see, and she can independently order her own food at a restaurant with the use of a device. And with support staff, she recycles our household items and goes to a couple different businesses in our community and does all that recycling. She loves to grocery shop and return pop bottles. She also has a cloth diaper service. She has a daily supervised job because I own a barbershop and cosmetology shop, and it's her responsibility to gather all the dirty clothes, wash them, dry them, fold them, and put them away. And this is a picture of Devin on a lunch date with Adam. And I have more really cute pictures. So I'm here to tell you, yeah, relationships, they happen. So as a parent, I know that sometimes hope is the scariest thing to have, but I'm here to tell you that the journey is worth it. And as parents, you may be in an overwhelming spot, but I'm here to tell you that the light at the end of the tunnel is very bright. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have now, or if you want to direct message me on Facebook in relation to any of the therapies we tried, I'm open for any of that. And then here is another picture of my daughter when she was getting ready to go to her prom. And then that's my story, and I look forward to the questions.
Beth, thank you so much for sharing that amazing story. Laura, would you like to share your story?
Sure. I wrote up this summary of Tim's life, and I'm just going to read it. Oh, there's Tim. That's when he was a baby. He has a GRIA 2 deletion. So I know a lot of you grandparents, his issues are going to be quite a bit different. But anyway, I'm just going to read this. So I apologize in advance, but I don't want to forget anything important. I'm Laura Hock. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. My husband, Chris, and I have 3 kids. David, the oldest, is 28, and he's married and has a baby, and they live in Florida. Amy's 25, and she's in grad school in Denver. And Tim, our GRIA son, is 21, and he still lives at home. When Tim was born, everything seemed just fine with him. He smiled and laughed, rolled over, sat up, crawled, everything right on time, just like his siblings. He walked 3 months later than they did, though. And he never really started talking, except for a few words like no. He never lost the word no for a long time. When he was 2, we took him to a psychologist who diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder. So we immediately started him into speech therapy, behavior therapy, occupational therapy. And by age 3, he had about 40 words. He had some simple phrases. He sang songs, and he could count to 20. So we assumed we were well on our way to having a high-functioning child who would lead a nearly normal life. Then at age 3 or 4, he started to lose his words. And by the time he was 9, he could no longer speak at all. None of his many doctors could explain this. It's abnormal even for autism to lose spoken language this late. He continued to grow in his ability to understand language, though, and he was able to use picture cards like PECs. And eventually we tried a speech device, but we didn't have much luck with that for a while. And he was able to express his wants and needs with pictures back then. Let's see, his gross motor skills have always been really good. Fine motor, not so much. He's very muscular nowadays. He's a fast runner, unfortunately. He's also extremely strong, which can be a problem. Anyway, let's get back to when he was 11. So Tim had he had started having significant motor and verbal tics. So we took him to a neurologist who diagnosed him with Tourette's. Then at age 13, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. He started eating paper and carpet and drywall and became anemic. So we knew something was up. So we took him to a GI doc who diagnosed the Crohn's. And then later on, around 15 or 16, is when the aggression started with puberty. And since he's so strong, this was quite a problem, especially for female teachers and therapists. So we started him back into behavior therapy. He had taken a break from that for a while, but with the aggression, we decided we needed more behavior therapy. And he had injured, with the first behavior therapy group, he injured one of his behavior therapists, so they fired him. And since then, we found a better behavior therapy group, and they're doing really well with him. So, but prior to all this, he had had 2 separate overnight EEGs just to rule out seizures, because sometimes he would have tantrums that would just seem to come out of nowhere. Like he's just doing a preferred activity, and all of a sudden he's screaming. And so they did EEGs and an MRI, and nothing showed up. So for years, his dad and I would always say that autism was the least of his worries. He had been to a geneticist at age 3, and they tested him for Fragile X syndrome, and that came out negative. And so we just assumed his genes were fine. But since he lost his speaking ability and became increasingly aggressive, we decided, okay, genetics has come a long way. Let's give it another try. And when he was born, we lived in Tennessee, but it had since moved to Colorado. So we took him to a geneticist in Denver at Children's Hospital. And she was concerned that maybe he had childhood disintegrative disorder. And so she agreed to do the complete exome sequencing for Tim and both of us parents. And the results showed that his dad and I are normal, relatively genetically normal anyway. And Tim had the GRIA2 deletion, and she called it a spelling error. It also showed an abnormality of the GRIA1 gene, but the geneticist believed that all his problems were a result of GRIA2. Soon after finding this out, we sent Tim's blood, my husband's blood, all to London. And they were doing a study of a cohort of 20 GRIA2 patients. And they published a paper, and Tim got an official, finally at age 20, I think, he got an official diagnosis of GRIA2 related neurodevelopmental disorder. Okay, this summary leaves out tons of other things that we tried for autism, like the special diets, the Defeat Autism Now doctors, the chelation, just so many things that worked for everybody else with autism, but not for Tim. But these were the important things that I think really helped us. So currently, Tim's 21 years old. He's very healthy. His Crohn's disease is in remission. When he's stressed, he still has tics. He can kind of yell. He can get excited. But his aggression is much better. That's gotten a lot better, especially since he left school. And he has a consistent staff at his day program, consistent schedule. I think the consistency has been huge for him. And then also just getting older. You know, I think puberty is so hard, even for my typical kids. 15, 16 was just awful. But I think everybody just settles down, and he seems to be doing that as well. So he very rarely has aggression these days, and he's a lot happier. He rarely breaks things anymore. He attends his day program 5 days per week and is training to work on a therapeutic farm. He's going to do that a few hours per week, and he even gets a little paycheck for that. The things he likes nowadays, he loves to eat. He loves to go for walks. He loves to go for rides in his stroller. He loves to jump on the trampoline, listen to music, watch movies, sit in the steamy shower, go for rides to the mountains, and play outdoors at parks. So I would say overall, Tim is a happy young adult.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sheila, would you like to share your story?
Sure. I'm Sheila Bardeman. My daughter Casey and I'm a single parent. So we both live together in Birmingham, Alabama. Casey is almost 35. November 6th, she will be 35. And reflecting back when she was an infant, you know, so many of our stories are so similar and a little bit different, but so similar. But when Casey was first born, she was one of the most beautiful babies I'd ever seen, and dark black hair. Her hair was already so long that we had to cut it out of her eyes. It was just everywhere. She couldn't see. she had these big, pretty blue eyes, and I never picked up on anything was abnormal about Casey. And my mother, having 7 children, my mother said, Sheila, something is wrong with Casey. I was like, no, she's just a little baby, she's a little infant. And I did not realize, looking back now, but I did not realize at the time how floppy she was. And that was her diagnosis at 7, 8 months old. She was identified as a floppy baby, hypotonia, muscles. I couldn't get any answers from the doctors. We were never told what caused it. Some doctors would even say that she had cerebral palsy. Other doctors would question that diagnosis and say, no, she's not in that category, because she was so low muscle tone. And so I read a lot about children and individuals with cerebral palsy, and I did not see the connection with Casey. And I thought, well, Casey must be very unique because she doesn't have the spastic muscles that, as a special ed teacher, that's what I'm still doing today. But back at that time, I didn't see a lot of children like Casey. And Casey couldn't hold her head up. We started at a very young age with physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, communication devices, which were not successful because she did not have the ability to control that movement and to activate a switch with her hand. She didn't have like a whole lot of control, meaningful purpose with her hands. So her hands, like, we've been listening to some of the other adults when they were children, how they had behavior issues and self-harm. And she would do that. She would gag herself when she was an infant. We didn't realize that she had acid reflux. So she was trying to burp. She cried a lot. She was a fussy baby. There was like nothing I could do would soothe her. And at the time, I didn't realize with Casey's diagnosis that everything I read today, I'm like, check, that's Casey. The behavior issues, concerns, feeding difficulties, swallowing difficulties, controlling the liquid. Some activity, we termed it as episodes. It seemed like it was the seizure, but we were not really sure. So she went through testing and had the EEG, and we even spent the night in the hospital. And my observation, I brought it up to the doctors at Children's Hospital in Birmingham and said, I said, every time I set Casey up, she burps. So is it possible there's something going on with her stomach? Is it possible that's why she's screaming all the time? And so they went ahead and checked her and said, yes, that her pH level was not normal. So yes, it did indicate she had a lot of acid reflux. So when I finally started getting more help with Casey to address the constipation due to low muscle tone, the acid reflux, I think it's tied into the GRIN, and maybe even, Casey has GRIN 1, but I think also that I'm hearing so many similar stories and so many similar characteristics of our children that I'm thinking that this must be something that many of our children with GRIN have, the feeding difficulties and the stomach issues, constipation, and etc. But we tried everything, and I've been told before that even United Cerebral Palsy, Casey used to go to their day program, and I was told that they said we really cannot meet Casey's needs here because Casey does not want to sit in her wheelchair for the whole duration of her time in a day program. So she cries. to communicate. She, looking back, she has made a tremendous amount of progress. She's made a lot of improvements, and she even says words that it just catches me off guard, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she's communicating with me, and it has meaning and it has purpose. And so with Casey, she has come a long way, and as a parent, don't ever give up hope. I I would sometimes, I would think, and I pray. Everyone, has different religious beliefs, but I would just pray, for God to give me strength as a single parent with Casey, and give me strength. Allow me to sleep at night so I can get up the next morning and do everything over again. But we've done so much with Casey, and she's been with the Special Olympics. We went snow skiing 93 and 1994 to Boone, North Carolina, and that was so much fun. We did a lot of the adaptive water skiing, the adaptive swimming, adaptive PE, any kind of recreation that we could find, the horseback riding. Of course, though, we needed assistance because Casey's body, she cannot sit independently. The only time that she would stand was if she was in a stander, but she really rejected that. She would scream and holler, and it was like you didn't know if it was really hurting her muscles, pulling her muscles, or if it was a temper tantrum, or was she just communicating and saying, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. So over the years, she does not get as much therapy as she did when she was little in the early intervention program. But we just got the diagnosis of GRIN 1 about 2 summers ago. And, it took that many years to finally find out that this is what Casey has. And I've had people ask me, is she autistic? Because, that's what you say, her behavior. She's rubbing her head. And I don't know, again, if it's something typical with our children or young adults with GRIN, but she rubs her head a lot. And I don't know if it's a sensory thing. She does have chronic sinusitis, so she's always rubbing. And she makes her nose red, her face red. Sometimes, she'll break out with the red, like blotches or something, all over her neck, her arm. So I don't know sometimes exactly what's going on inside of Casey's body. But this picture, this was recent. And this is her little pose. When I try to take pictures of her, she does not look at the camera. She looks downward a lot. But she has made a lot of progress and a lot of improvements. And, the challenges today that I face is that she is getting older. I can still physically take care of her, but I do need to make some arrangements in case something happens to me, to have those kind of plans and wishes in place. So my mother just passed away, so I don't have my mother now to oversee Casey's care. So I'm looking at one of my sisters, and I'm trying to get everything lined up for Casey just for the what ifs. But I know there's another forum about placing our children out of home, and I think that will be very interesting to see what we all think, because I know with Casey, she does need that socialization, but at the same time, I have that fear that she may become abused or neglected, or someone not really understand what her needs are, or not having the patience with her. So there's a lot of concerns, a lot of worries, thinking about that as we both age. But she does not take any kind of medication for behavior. She takes over-the-counter Prevacid, Miralax twice a day. and now she's on some allergy medication for her sinuses. But something I wish that I had known years ago, I didn't realize with Casey having the low muscle tone, I didn't realize that, no one told me that, hey, she's probably going to have scoliosis. She may possibly need surgery later on. And so that was a big shock for me. I did not want her to have the surgery because I thought about all the pain. But, just not knowing what we're walking into, and she doesn't have a feeding tube. She's able to eat by mouth, but she does not have any self-help skills at all. So she would be more in the severe profound on that range. And that's her vocalizing. She's letting me know right now that she's not comfortable. But she has spoken some words, and it's amazing. She has said, I love you. Thank you. I say, hey, Casey, hey. And she'll say, hey. And I said, Casey, I've got to go help my mom. My mom's sick. And she said, I know. And I was just like, oh, my goodness, So as a parent, just don't ever underestimate your child. And if you do come up against roadblocks, make sure that you are informed, that you know what your child or adult is entitled to with the school system and the therapy and different things like that. So I can't really think of anything else. Casey did have, with the sinus infection, she did have spinal meningitis. That she was about 9 years old, but she was able to survive that. It's amazing. She had 3 surgeries, craniotomies, but she's tough, and she's a little fighter, and she's beautiful. And, I just can't see Casey any different way. But it's very difficult and very challenging being a single parent. And I've made a lot of sacrifices, but it's all been worth it. It's just been worth it. And I know Casey's made sacrifices. So, but if anyone has any questions, I'm available. And I just say, do not give up hope, that you don't know what's inside your child, what they're thinking, and what they're capable of. So I'm excited to see the future genetics and artificial intelligence and everything, just to see how that can help our children and our adults, be integrated more so into the community and their environment, and being able to control their environment more so. So, but that is all I have. But if anyone has any questions, just reach out to me.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And please, folks, feel free to add questions into the Q&A. There was one question, Sheila, you kind of touched on it, that I think is a really great one to ask the rest of the group. What do you wish someone told you when your child was younger? Beth, what's 1 or 2 things that you wish someone had have told you when your child was younger?
Definitely that it would get better, that it would get easier, and to not necessarily to trust your instincts as a mother. Like, as parents, I think sometimes we can go, oh, we're not a speech therapist, we're not this and we're not that, but we know our children like we know the back of our hands, especially when they're nonverbal, because we've learned all their cues. Trust yourself. I'm a chicken person. Things intimidate me, but because of Devin, I have learned to stand up and advocate. Getting her back into genetics took 5 phone calls, trips to the doctor, and I just simply refused to give up. And that's the thing. Devin's learning curve is very slow. It took her a year to learn how to put on her sock. And had I known when she was younger that it took actually that long, that was her actual learning curve, I wouldn't have given up. So just don't give up. Fight for your child. because you know your child. So that's the best I have for that, I think.
Laura, what about you? What's the one or two things you wish someone told you?
I wish that we had gotten on waiting lists with the state for funding earlier. And I wish we had we have a consultant that's helped us with Tim's transition to adulthood. And he helped us with our transition IEP at school. I wish we had hired him a little earlier to help with the IEP at school, because Tim was kind of neglected at school, I found out later. There was he's just so much better now that school's out. And like Beth said, I wish we had known things would get better, that aggression is not going to be the way it's going to be forever. It's not going to get worse. And I wish we'd known that he had GRIA too a lot earlier. So we wouldn't have wasted so much time and money on all the autism treatments.
And I think there's another thing that I think some folks touched on, but it's a really, some of you touched on a really interesting question. Has your child continued to develop new skills? I think in your stories, some of you touched on that, but just to summarize, Beth, have you seen continued skill development?
You know what? It is actually amazing. It's very hard to get the foundation laid, to get past the behaviors, to get past the anxiety, and, you know, to figure out a system that works. And my daughter's 31 and she's still continuing to grow. And, you know, in agreement with Laura, we loved the school because it was safety, it was consistency. There were so many positives. But since Devon's been out of school, and she's had more one-on-one, it's just been so much better.
Laura, what about you? The skill development?
Tim has finally learned to use a speech device, a communication device, and he loves it. For a while there, he didn't see the need because he could get his point across other ways to us at home because we knew all his cues, but he'll go and grab that and he'll bring it to you and he'll say, stroller, stroller, stroller. So he sees the need, he's accurate with it, and he's really developed some good skills with communication.
Sheila?
Well, again, you know, things do get better. I think, you know, with Casey, I think probably all of us parents, we went through like a grieving process, you know, grieving of what our child will never do or can never do, or never have the opportunity. But just take the never out and say, yes, you know, my child will be able to do this or that. And we have to remember too that all of our children are very unique. They wouldn't be who they are without GRIN, because they all have their own personality. And I see a lot of similarities with our children, the facial features, and they're pretty children. But yes, as a special education teacher, and I fully agree that some of our children, they need one-on-one. And our children would do so much better if they did have that resource in place, one-on-one. But, you know, an IEP, so special ed teacher, we have to word it as small group. Because when you word it as one-on-one, then you're saying, well, this individual requires a paraprofessional. But wouldn't it be wonderful if the schools would, if they were fully funded and all of our children had a one-on-one? I wonder what the possibilities would be for them. So just advocate with the school system. Just because people in the school system have degrees does not mean that they are the best person in that position. Keep your eyes open, and if you feel like you need to speak up, speak up. And I was also very quiet until Casey came along. And now today, I don't have a problem advocating for Casey. And that's why she and I choose to live alone, because I'm just like, this is Casey's house. Okay. This is Casey's house. So, but yeah, just, be a voice for your child. And if it's hard for you to do that, reach out to the other parents, because we've all been there, and our children are older. So we might have some good advice for you to help you.
What do you each see as like if you could summarize kind of the main difference being a parent to an adult child versus a small, like when your children were younger?
Did you want me to go first again?
Yeah, sure.
You know what? It is so much easier. It is so much easier because with the learning, using the communication device and being able to, express her wants and needs, that eliminates a lot of frustration. So when your kids are young and you're getting diagnosed, it's like you're going to a doctor and you're getting kicked in the gut, and then you're still trying to come home and have the emotional energy to give them the care that they need. And then boom, another thing happens, kicked in the gut again. And when they get older, you just get in your routine. And like Sheila said, like my house is Devin's house, and let's make no mistakes about it. But they have the routine. You have your routine. Mm-hmm. So long as there's no big surprises, there's no behaviors, and they're just happy-go-lucky kids. And it just is so much easier because you've crossed all those obstacles, and you're getting a lot more happiness because they're still making progress. Hopefully all of us continue to learn. So really, it's just a lot easier as they get older. Once you get past puberty, everything gets easier, I think. Mm-hmm. For us, it did.
Yeah.
Laura, what would you say?
I would agree with the puberty thing. Just hang on for dear life.
Those were tough years.
Going down those rapids, just don't stand up in the boat. Just hang on. Mm-hmm. And it will get better. The thing that's harder for us, having a very mobile, strong kid, is that if it's time to leave the park, or if it's time to get out of the car, you can't just scoop them up and say, let's go. You gotta, they have to be ready to go. They have to be willing. So sometimes you have to wait them out, and sometimes you have to have some tricks up your sleeve, like, let's go home and get a Coke, something they never get to have. And we're having to get anesthesia for the dentist now and for blood draws, because, you can't just wrap them up and hold them in your lap and make them do things anymore. So,
Sheila, what would you say is the big difference?
Much easier, just much easier, because communication has improved. All the years of experience as a parent, in the beginning, Casey's size, it was easy just to scoop her up and let's go. But, now she is a little heavier. She's still small, though. She's probably only about 5'1". She usually stays between 90 and 100 pounds in that area. But much easier, just less stressful. I think I've learned how to balance a lot of things. And, I don't have time for relationships, because some of those relationships, they kind of impede upon Casey's rights, So I'm just like, hey, Casey, it's okay. It's meant for us to, have our own little life like it is. It works for us.
That's
so
fantastic.
I think just hang in there. It does get easier. It does get better. It really, really does.
So we're just, we're running out of time. We're almost at the end. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. There's some questions in the chat that we will get answers to. Thank you so much to everyone on this panel for sharing your stories. I found it so helpful and so incredibly inspiring. So thank you for sharing that and taking the time to answer our questions. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.